asked to testify against my abusive neighbor so that his kids would be safe, but if I did, I was risking my daughter being taken away by him. When CPS called, the social worker said, "We need you to testify at the emergency hearing. Without your statement, the case will just get dropped and the kids will go right back home." I looked over at the 6-year-old boy whose arm was bent at a weird angle and had been for 3 weeks now. The 9-year-old was stuffing crackers into his pockets for later like he always did. These kids had been showing up at my door for months asking for food. They wore the same clothes until they literally fell apart, and their father left them alone for days at a time. The social worker kept talking about how I was their only witness they had, and how the system needed more proof to protect the boys. All I could think about was what their father told me 3 months ago. He had cornered me in the parking lot at the grocery store after I'd called in my first complaint. His exact words still make my skin crawl even now. "You know what happens to pretty little girls who get snatched walking home from school? They end up in shipping containers heading to places where nobody ever finds them. Maybe you should mind your own business before your kid ends up on a missing person poster." My daughter Nadia was 10 and walked 3 blocks home from school every day. I had already noticed one of his guys following her and taking pictures with his phone. The thing about those kids is, I have been feeding them for 6 months while watching them survive hell. The 6-year-old had cigarette burns covering his legs that looked like a constellation of torture. His fingernails were gone as punishment for crying too loud. The 9-year-old had teeth missing from malnutrition. He kept a notebook tracking how many days they had been left alone, and the longest stretch was 11 days. He had written down every time his brother cried from hunger, and every time they had to eat insects to survive. They told me they had eaten dog food from the neighbor's garage when they got desperate enough. The little one called me food lady, and would sit on my porch for hours just to be near someone who noticed he existed. The answer seemed obvious, but then I thought about Nadia, and my stomach twisted into knots. She was my miracle baby after 3 miscarriages, and the only child I would ever have after ovarian cancer took that choice away. She was still young enough to believe the world was full of magic. If I testified, those kids would be saved, but Nadia could end up God knows where going through God knows what. If I stayed silent, those boys would go back to eating insects and getting burned with cigarettes, but Nadia would be safe at home with me. My ex-husband called me crying and begging me not to do it. "They will take Nadia, and then we will never see her again," he said over and over until I hung up. My sister also tried to talk me out of it. "Those aren't your kids, and this isn't worth losing yours," she kept saying. I couldn't make her understand that somebody had to be the adult who gave a damn about them. I had lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks from the stress and hadn't slept more than 2 hours a night. Every time I decided to testify, I would picture Nadia screaming for me from some shipping container. Every time I decided to stay silent, I'd see those cigarette burns. And remember the boys drinking water from the toilet when their water got shut off? No one else in the neighborhood would testify because they knew their father had killed at least 2 people who'd crossed him, though nobody could prove it. I spent that whole night throwing up and staring at my ceiling with no idea of what I was going to do. The morning of the hearing, I tried to act normal as I got Nadia ready for school and closely watched every car that passed. Those kids were going to die if they went back, and I couldn't live with that. I'd written down everything I wanted to say. I was putting on my best dress when the news alert popped up on my phone. Federal agents had raided 6 houses at dawn, including my neighbor's house. They arrested 14 people in a huge trafficking and substance bust. My neighbor was apparently the main guy running the whole network for this region. The kids were already in protective custody and being treated at the hospital. Their grandmother was able to find them after the news broke out and took the boys to her house. On Facebook, I saw a picture of the boys smiling with full cheeks and clean clothes.